Shabbat Shalom and welcome back to Return the Remnant Ministry. We're continuing our study in the book of Revelation, and today we're going to be in Revelation chapter 7, a short chapter, not too many verses in here. Looks like about 17 verses, and as I've done in the past, I'm going to continue to read into the Hebrew Revelation, and I'll put links in the description below so you can purchase this book if you like, just to add to your library with your Bibles and other study materials. Also going to be using eSword today. You can find that for free online. It is an excellent app, if you will, e-sword.net maybe. If you just do a Google search, you'll be able to find it, but it's a very, very helpful resource if you have a laptop, PC, or you can even go MySword to use for any Android device that you have. Just very, very good to use. Technology today has helped us study the Bible a lot deeper. But anyway, let's get into Revelation 7. What I like to do is I'm going to go ahead and read out of this translation first, and then I'm going to make a few comments, and I also have a couple dot connections that I think you'll be interested in. And also just a couple theories that I have. They're just my opinion and just something to ponder. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. In Revelation chapter 7, verse 1. And after this, I saw 4 messengers standing at the 4 corners of the earth and holding back the 4 winds of the earth, so that there would not be wind on the earth or on the waters or on any tree. Then I saw another messenger who came from the rising of the sun, and he had the seal of the living El. And he imposed and cried out with a great voice to the 4 messengers to whom it was given to damage the earth and the sea. And he said, "Do not damage the earth or the sea or the trees until I place a mark on the foreheads of the servants of Yahweh." And I heard the number of those who were sealed. It was 144,000 who were sealed, of the families of the children of Israel. From the tribe of Yehuda, 12,000. From the tribe of Reuben, 12,000. From the tribe of Gad, 12,000. From the tribe of Asher, 12,000. From the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000. From the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000. From the tribe of Shimon, 12,000. From the tribe of Levi, 12,000. From the tribe of Issachar, 12,000. From the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000. And from the tribe of Yosef, 12,000. And from the tribe of Benjamin, 12,000. And after this, I saw a great crowd, which one is not able to number, from all the peoples, standing before the throne, before the Lamb. And they were clothed in white garments, and in their hands were branches. And they cried out with a great voice and said, "The salvation belongs to Yahweh and to the Lamb." And all the messengers were standing around the throne, and the elders and the living creatures. And they fell on their faces before the throne and prayed to Yahweh and said, "Lauding and thanks and praises and honor and glory and power and might be to our Elohim from everlasting and unto everlasting. Amen." Then one of the elders answered and said to me, "Who are these that are clothed in white garments, and from what place do they come?" So I said to him, "Adon, you know." And he said to me, "These are they who come from the midst of much suffering, and they have washed their garments and purified their garments with the blood of the Lamb. And because of this, they are before the throne of Yahweh, and they will serve him day and night. And he who sits on the throne, he will dwell by them. And this is, they will not be hungry nor thirsty, and burning heat in the sun will not smite them. For the Lamb will lead them to a well of waters, and Yahweh Elohim will wipe off the tears from all faces." And thus ends our reading of chapter 7. And what I'd like to share with you is a couple interesting things. Up to this point, we have read the first 7 chapters, and we see a theme in these first 7 chapters. We know in chapter 2 and 3 was talking, Yeshua was telling us the reward of the overcomer, and that we must overcome. And then in chapters 4 and 5, we see Yeshua as our template, as the one who did overcome. He is the example that we're to follow. And then chapter 7, what I just read today, is that fulfillment of God's promise for the overcomer, that we can overcome through him, not on our own, not with our beans and bullets and all that stuff, but that through Yeshua, we can overcome the Antichrist and the adversary in these end days. So let's pick apart chapter 7 a little bit. I'm going to start a little bit backwards here. I'm going to first go to the last couple verses that we have here in Revelation 7. And it's very interesting that in verses 16 and 17, we have two sentences here. And it says, and this is, and there's a quote, they will not be hungry nor thirsty, and burning heat in the sun will not smite them. This is talking about the remnant, the overcomers. For the Lamb will lead them to a well of waters, and Yahweh Elohim will wipe off the tears from all faces. So this is not just John talking here. This is a fulfillment of prophecy. If we go back to Isaiah, and I'll pull it up here on eSword. Isaiah, let's go to Isaiah 49:10. And the beginning part of Isaiah 49 is one of the four servant songs of Isaiah, which relates to Yeshua. If you ever have an opportunity, I'll put the link below. But I have a teaching on the four servant songs of Isaiah. They're not discussed in Judaism. They're not in any of the Haftorot in the yearly cycle. But this will help you get an understanding of the role of Yeshua as servant. One of the four servant songs is widely known. It's Isaiah 53, but there are a couple others like Isaiah 42, 49, and I'm not sure if 50 is in there or not. But anyway, you might want to read that. It's pretty good. But as we get into Isaiah 49, we get into verse 10, and here it says the same thing, speaking about Yah's people. They shall not hunger nor thirst, neither shall the heat nor sun smite them. For he that has mercy on them shall lead them. Even by the springs of water shall he guide them. This is definitely talking about Yeshua and his people. And isn't it interesting that this will be a fulfillment when the remnant puts on their white robes, and Yeshua is there'll be a fulfillment of prophecy. That verse right there. The second part, when it says the Lamb will lead them to a well of waters. Okay. Let's go. There's the wells of water in Isaiah 49:10. There also is here in Revelation that we see Isaiah prophesied thousands of years ago. If we go to Isaiah 25, verse 8, it says the following: He will swallow up death in victory, and the sovereign Yahweh will wipe away tears from off all faces. And the rebuke of his people shall he take away from all the earth, for Yahweh has spoken. And here it is. It says he will wipe away every time. It says Yahweh Elohim, the last verse of chapter 7, verbatim. Yahweh Elohim will wipe off the tears from all faces. And what does it say here at the end? That the sovereign Yahweh will wipe away tears from off all the faces. So this will be two prophecies fulfilled in the end times right here as given by Isaiah approximately 3,000 years ago. So I find that phenomenal. I think that's pretty awesome. So let's get back to now the beginning of Revelation chapter 7. Let me pull it up here on eSword. So here are the number of them that were sealed. And interesting, we have other places in Scripture that do talk about a sealing of Yah's people. And I guess I'm going to be kind of jumping around a little bit. So I know I've got my notes here, but I know I'm going to be hopping around. So turn with me, if you could, to Ezekiel chapter 9. Ezekiel chapter 9. And this is what's going on in Jerusalem After Ephraim, the northern kingdom was taken away, and Judah and the southern kingdom is all that's left. This is just before they're taken into captivity by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. And we're going to read Ezekiel chapter 9. He cried also in my ears with a loud voice, saying, cause them that have charge over the city to draw near, even every man with his destroying weapon in his hand. And behold, 6 men came from the way of the higher gate, which lies toward the north, and every man a slaughter weapon in his hand. And one man among them was clothed with linen, with a writer's inkhorn by his side. And they went in and stood beside the brazen altar. And the splendor of the Elohim of Israel was gone up from the cherub, whereupon he was to the threshold of the house. And he called to the man clothed with linen, which had the writer's inkhorn by his side. And Yahweh said unto him, go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark. And in Hebrew, that is tav. It is tav. It's the tav vav. Set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. And to the others he said in my hearing, go ye after him through the city and smite. Let not your eyes spare, neither have ye pity. Slay utterly old and young, both maids and little children and women, but come not near any man upon whom is the tav, the mark, and begin at my sanctuary. Then they began at the ancient men which were before the house, or the elders. And he said unto them, defile the house and fill the courts with the slain. Go forth. And they went forth and slew in the city. And it came to pass while they were slaying them, and I was left, that I fell upon my face. So there's Ezekiel falling on his face. And he cried and said, ah, sovereign Yahweh, will you destroy all the residue of Israel in your pouring out of your fury upon Jerusalem? Then said he unto me, the iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is exceedingly great, and the land is full of blood, and the city full of perverseness. For they say, Yahweh has forsaken the earth, and Yahweh sees not. And as for me also, my eye shall not spare, neither will I have pity, but I'll recompense their way upon their head. And behold, the man clothed with linen, which had the inkhorn by his side, reported the matter, saying, I have done as you have commanded me. So wouldn't that be interesting? I believe that the 144,000 might be this angel clothed in linen, this malach, this messenger, who will also put an inkhorn and will put the sign of the tav on the 144,000, that they won't be touched. And could they be, the 144,000, could they be potentially Yah's army in the end days? I don't know. But I find it interesting. We're going to go over to Numbers 31. And some of you probably already know the story of the sin of Baal Peor, and how the Midianites in Moab, how they caused Israel to turn away and from God for a short period of time, and many people were destroyed in a slaughter. And what ends up happening later, we go through, there's several chapters that talk about vows and other things. And then in Ezekiel 31, God says, I want you to go, or not Ezekiel, I'm sorry. In Numbers 31, he tells the children of Israel, now go strike the Midianites. And what we see here is 1,000 from each tribe. So we're going to read 1 through 6 here. Yahweh spoke unto Moshe, saying, avenge the children of Israel of the Midianites. Afterwards shall you be gathered unto your people. And Moshe spake unto the people, saying, arm some of yourselves unto the war, and let them go against the Midianites, and avenge Yahweh of Midian. Of every tribe 1,000. Throughout all the tribes of Israel shall you send to the war. So there were delivered out of the thousands of Israel 1,000 of every tribe, 12,000 armed for war. Moshe sent them to the war, 1,000 of every tribe, them and Pinchas, the son of Eleazar the priest, to the war with the holy instruments and the trumpets to blow in his hand. So they go to war, they fight the Midianites, and they were successful, and they come back with a lot of spoil. And then, interestingly, dropping down to verses 48 and 49. And the officers which were over thousands of the host, the captains of thousands and captains of hundreds, came near unto Moshe, and they said unto Moshe, your servants have taken the sum of the men of war which are under our charge, and there lacks not one man of us. So there was 12,000 that went out to battle, and I believe they were sealed. They were sealed, and every one of them came back alive. And we don't know the purpose of the 144,000, what their purpose will be in the end times. But if there's anything that they go to war or anything like that for a short period of time, I don't know. But I find a thematic connection here between the 12,000 of Israel and who was kind of over them? Pinchas, right? He was one of the sons of Aaron, of the high priesthood. And here we have in the end days Yeshua as our high priest in the 144,000. So just some thought to keep in the back of your mind as we continue to go through Revelation. I've got a couple other things I find interesting. I want to share with you something that I was looking at. As we look at the 144,000, again, we only get a snippet of the 144,000 and the remnant in chapter 7. We get more details concerning the 144,000 and the remnant as we get into Revelation chapter 12 and Revelation chapter 14. And what I like to show you in Revelation 14, I'll pull it up. Revelation 14. This is about the 144,000. It says, and they sung, as it were, a new song before the throne and before the four beasts. This is chapter 14, verse 3. And the elders, they're up in heaven right now. And no man can learn that song but the 144,000, which were redeemed from the earth, meaning they're no longer on the earth. They're now in the heavens. These are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These are redeemed from among men, being the first fruits unto Elohim and to the Lamb. And I don't know if I talked about this last week, but I know in the last couple weeks, going through Revelation, how I expounded upon in the Gospel of Matthew, when Yeshua was crucified, that at that time, when he gave up the Spirit, the rocks rent, the earth shook, the temple in the outer court of the veil was torn. And it says, and some of the tombs were opened. And then remember how it says, and only after Yeshua was resurrected, did these people that were in the tombs come out. They were dead. They were resurrected. They came out and they showed themselves among the people. And you remember how I was explaining how in John chapter 20, I think around verse 17, Yeshua revealed himself to Mary. And Mary was just so overjoyed and happy. She wanted to grab a hold of Yeshua, but Yeshua said, do not yet touch me, for I have not ascended to my Father in heaven. And I believe this was a direct fulfillment of the ceremony in Leviticus 23 concerning Rashi Katsir, the first fruits. During the week of unleavened bread, you can read about it in Leviticus 23. The high priest would present the first fruits, the Rashi Katsir, not the bikkurim. It does not say in the text the bikkurim. You're going to see what I'm going to talk about here in just a minute. But it was the Rashi Katsir. It was the first fruits. And remember, only the high priest could wave this first fruits. And Yeshua, as our high priest, I believe he waved before his Father in heaven the first fruits of those that came out of the tombs after his resurrection. And we're talking about people like Elijah, Moshe, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Some of the people that we read about in the Torah and in parts of the Tanakh, and probably people that are not recorded in the Tanakh that were considered righteous in their day. Even Enoch and Noah. So this is just my opinion, and it's not a salvation issue, but I believe when we look at Leviticus 23, the feast of Yahweh, I see many things happening. I see these are all mikras, in Hebrew mikras meaning rehearsals. These are instructions for us to keep and to do at their appointed time. Number two, they are prophecies, if you will. It's all about, I'll put it this way, it's all about Yeshua. That Yeshua is also a fulfillment of these feasts. And I'm of the opinion that even we are a fulfillment of these feasts. So, for instance, it says 3 times a year, and I believe it's in Exodus 23. It says 3 times a year we are to come before Yahweh, in Jerusalem. And obviously right now we're scattered. We can't do that, but there will be a day. In the millennial kingdom, we'll be doing it every year. I mean, Zechariah 14 is very clear, talking about the Feast of Sukkot, the Feast of Ingathering, Tabernacles. And if that's the case, then we will continue to keep these feasts in the millennial kingdom. But getting back to this, if indeed there were some of the saints of old that were presented before the Father at the appointed time of the first fruits offering during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, waived by the high priest, then that would make sense then that at Shavuot there is what's called the Yom HaBikkurim. And I want you to see what I'm seeing here, and I hope I can show it in a way that you can track with me. But I'm just going to pull out my NASB. So as we go through the Feast of the Lord, we got Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, that's in there. And then later we have Shavuot. And Shavuot is kind of like the middle feast. If you say there's 7 feasts, then it would be like the middle candle of the menorah. But we really have more than 7 feasts. We really have 8. And if you want to get technical, you can also add all the Sabbaths of the year to it. But there's also another feast, which is the Shemini Atzeret, the 8th day, the great day, which we'll get into that as we go along here in Revelation. But 3 times a year, as Exodus 23 says, that we are to come up to Jerusalem. We're to come up for unleavened bread. We're to come up, so the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which also contains the first fruits, the Passover, the first fruits, unleavened bread, they're all mixed in there. Then we're to come up again for Shavuot for the bikkurim. And then we're to come up again in the fall feast at Tabernacles when we bring in all the other produce and everything else. And I just think that this is a shadow picture. As Yeshua is fulfilling these, he fulfilled the spring feast, and he's going to fulfill the fall feast at the appointed time. Well, then I believe also the bride or his people are also going to play a major role on those days as well. So again, as I said, the Rashit Katsir being the saints of old that were redeemed at Yeshua's first coming after he was resurrected. He presented them before the Father in heaven as a wave sheaf offering before the harvest could begin. Then we have, I believe, the 144,000. It says, what does it say? You don't read it in Revelation 7, but you do in Revelation 14. It says that these 144,000 were the first fruits unto Elohim and to the Lamb. Now they're not the Rashit Katsir. If I pull out a Hebrew translation of Revelation, it says the ki bikkurim, Okay. Bikkurim, the first fruits, the bikkurim, not the Rashit Katsir. If I pull up this Revelation book, give me a few seconds here. If I go to Revelation 14, it is there as well. The first book, first fruits, is La Bikkurot. Again, the same root word of bikkur. It is bikkurim. It is the first fruits. And wouldn't that be interesting if these are resurrected, that they're taken up at Shavuot? Not everyone. Because if you look at how Revelation is, Revelation, there's a pause. We read in Revelation 7, as I read to you earlier, how we talk about 144,000. And then later, he says, after this, we don't know what the time period is, but then after this, I saw a great crowd. And these are ones that came out of the great tribulation. So there's a break there in between when the 144,000 go, and then later when the remnant, when they are raptured up, if you will, for lack of a better word. We also see, I don't want to steal the punchline here, but when you get into Revelation 12, there I'll show you the chiastic structure and the thematic connection between the 144,000 and the woman with child, and then how the woman with child, the child was taken up. And I know a lot of us think it's Yeshua, and it very well could be. It could be a dual prophecy, not only Yeshua, but also 144,000. But I'm going to show you several dot connections that you'll see that it is indeed the 144,000, because then it says, then the dragon went to make war with the remnant, the key word, the remnant of her seed, who keep the commandments of Yah and have the testimony of Yeshua. And that is the second group of people that we read about that are clothed in white, that came out of the great tribulation. So that's just my opinion on it. I'm not saying it's a salvation issue, but it just gives you another process to look at, another talking point, if you will. So now I want to bring up something that is real interesting, and that is the 144,000. And the big question is, for many of us who study the Tanakh, who understand the 12 sons of Jacob, who is later named Israel, that why is Dan there? I mean, why is Dan not there? Why is Dan not in Revelation 7 as 144,000? And there are basically three camps of thought on this. And the two most prominent thoughts I'm going to read to you about, and then I'm going to give you the third, lesser one, but I think it is the more correct one. So the three theories why Dan isn't there, and many of us have already heard that Dan is the tribe who got Israel into idolatry. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to go there, but if you go into Judges 18, you find out what they did. And so many people believe, well, that's why Dan isn't included in the 144,000. The second theory of why Dan isn't there in the 144,000 is that many people believe that Dan is the tribe where the Antichrist is going to come from. And there's even early church fathers that believe that. And my only thought to that is, if you look back in the Bible of the potential Antichrist figures, you had Nimrod, who was not of the tribe of Israel. You had Pharaoh, king of Egypt, when Israel was in Egypt, as an Antichrist figure, who was not Israel. Later, God sent Sennacherib, king of Assyria, to come and take away the northern kingdom. He could be considered an Antichrist figure, but he was not of Israel. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, who came down and took away the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah, into captivity. He was from Babylon. He was not of the tribes of Israel. And lastly, Antiochus Epiphanes, or Antiochus Epiphanes, however you want to pronounce him, king of the Seleucid Empire, which would be up in modern day Turkey, if you will. He was definitely an Antichrist type of figure, but he also was not of the tribes of Israel. So I do not believe that Dan is going to be the tribe where the Antichrist comes from. So that brings me down to the third theory, one that people don't really look into a lot, but I think it's a better explanation. And that is, punchline, scribal error. I mean, there's over 5,000 different translations of the New Testament, over 5,000 different translations, riddled with errors. Not to say that the book themselves isn't of an error, but it's just hard to translate. Once you get a couple of translations that are off, and then they're copied and off, it's like kind of the grapevine principle. You tell somebody something about somebody, and by the time it gets to the 12th person, it's totally different than what you said to the first person. But I'm going to go ahead and give you some thoughts on this. Accordingly, the pulpit commentary reports. There's a guy by the name of Ewald. He believes that St. John wrote Dan, and that man, the abbreviated form of Manassas, was substituted by error. And he appeals to manuscripts 9 and 13, which have Dan in there, in the 144,000. If we take a look at these 12 tribes in Revelation 7, there's also some discrepancies. If Manasseh's in there, why isn't Ephraim in there? And we don't see Ephraim in there, and we don't see Dan in there. We see Joseph in there and Benjamin in there, but many times when Joseph is listed in there, Ephraim and Manasseh are not listed in there. Also, there are times where Levi is not listed, and we know that during the time in the Torah, when God took Levi to himself and made them the Levitical priesthood, they were not counted among the sons of Israel. And at that time, Joseph had the double blessing, and Ephraim and Manasseh basically took his place. So you still had the 12 tribes, around the tabernacle, if you would. There was basically 13 tribes at that time, because Levi would have been in the middle, although he's not counted. And the other 12 tribes, which excluded Joseph, but had in his place Ephraim and Manasseh, made that up, and Dan was there. Dan's also there when we look at, here are the sons of Jacob who later became Israel. In the book of Genesis, Dan is listed in there. We also know later in the millennial kingdom, there's going to be 12 gates going into the tabernacle, the temple of the Lord, if you will, and Dan's name is there. And if Dan's name is there, Dan's inheritance is also there. And that just tells me that Dan should be in here. He's not in here. Again, it's not a salvation issue, but I believe more than likely, more than anything else, it was a scribal error, and that he should be in here. So let's see. I'm going to make sure I got everything that I wanted to talk about today. We talked about the sealing, about the Tav. Wouldn't it be interesting that messenger that was robed in white linen that Ezekiel talks about in Ezekiel chapter 9, wouldn't that be something if that individual, that angel, that divine messenger, or whatever you want to call that individual, will use that inkwell again to mark the 144,000. We have to understand that when we get into the end times, we either need to be on God's side. God is going to put a mark on his people, and Hazatan is going to put a mark on his people. There's going to be no in between. You're either in the camp of Yahweh Elohim, or you're going to be in the camp of Hazatan. It's as simple as that. There's no gray area. I mean, Yeshua said, "I would rather you be hot or cold, not lukewarm. Lukewarm, I'm gonna spit you out." So keep that in mind as we go through this. That this final battle, this culmination, and it's very, very interesting because this culmination is going to be a fulfillment of the Genesis 3:15 prophecy, and we'll get into that more as we get into Revelation. But I'm going to leave it at that today. I'm glad I kept it short. Still went a little bit longer than I thought, but I will put some things into the description, some links. And as always, I look forward to hearing your comments and hit the like button if you like it, and hit subscribe, and I'll keep on doing this. But until we see you again, Shabbat Shalom, and may you have a great week.